Welcome to the OneRing.net. I'm so happy to have you guys here with us. We finally got our show running a little bit behind schedule, but at least behind schedule is better than not at all. So I want to say hello to an entire chat. There's a lot of people who are going to be showing up here in our chat, and I want to say hello to everybody. Welcome. This is Clifford Broadway starting the OneRing.net. Hello there. Nice to see you guys. Excuse me, I might make a little funny sound if I'm clearing my throat, but this is the beginning of Torn Tuesday, and we're here doing a show live from Hollywood, California. Justin is not here, unfortunately. Hello, the Shiv Knight, good to see you. And I want to say hello to everybody who's joining us on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, and the restreaming that we're doing on Discord and a lot of other channels. Welcome. This is the live show that you've been looking for on Tuesday afternoon. This is the OneRing.net Torn Tuesday. Hello, everybody. I see there's a whole bunch of people coming in. Lovely to see you. Hello, everybody. This is excellent. So all kinds of mischief has been going on. We're streaming live, coming to you from my wonderful living room. Hello, everybody. This is the show. We are coming to you from a soaking, wet Los Angeles on an election day. Believe it or not, I've got my brilliant, best thing that I ever got all day. Actually, to tell you the truth, if I can be quite honest, this is the best sticker that I got since the last election. All right? Ever since the very last election, this is the very best sticker that I've gotten. It's amazing. I've got an extra one for my roommate, okay? Because I went down to my polling place today. It's a very big day here in America. There's midterm elections going on. So I want to acknowledge the international audience. Hello, everybody. I know that you're coming to us from Asia, South America, Europe, and beyond. Perhaps you are tuning into our show from dimensions beyond space and time. That's quite possible. Just to let you know, everything here in the United States of America is bonkers right now. Totally bonkers because there's an election day happening. Hello, May Govanen. Great to see you guys. It's so good to have you guys here. Welcome, welcome. I just wanted to say how proud I am. Before we actually get into The Rings of Power on Amazon Prime and all the worlds of J.R.R. Tolkien, we have so many interesting things to talk about today. But before we get into that, ladies and gentlemen, I have to express the basic excitement that I have in terms that you can all understand. This was a civic engagement to vote today in a democratic republic in which I live here in the United States. It was so exciting. Even though Los Angeles is covered in a rainstorm, I was so excited to go out and perform my civic duty and to actually participate as a citizen in this remarkable process that we have, where you get to vote on the people and the policies that you want to vote on. And I can just imagine so many other rather forlorn places in the world where you do not get the vox populi. They don't get a chance to vote. There's so many other unfortunate places where the civic engagement is not at that level. So I honestly am not that cynical kind of person. I'm not cynical. If I don't have to be, I mean, we could sit together and talk about politics into the night, but to be quite honest, we don't do that here at the OneRing.net. We don't get political. We never talk about that stuff. We just put it off the table because we would much rather talk about, fantasy and science fiction and the way that storytelling affects our lives. That's that kind of audience that we have. But before we get to all that, I have to admit, there was something terribly exciting and engaging about being able to vote today here in my state, and with all this active elections going on for a new mayor in Los Angeles, and statewide propositions, and all these crazy things are going on. And the basic philosophy behind that is gratitude. Okay, I am grateful to be able to participate in the civic responsibility that I take very seriously and get involved in voices and understanding platforms and policies and things that are going on in the world, so that I can educate myself and become, that kind of a voter, who's knows what's going on. So it's really cool. It's just exciting to have gone down there and cast my ballot. I got some interesting photos of all the people standing in the rain. There was a lot of rain going on, but that doesn't matter. Come hell or high water, all these citizens in this country where I live, just voting and getting their voices heard and being part of the engagement of the process is pretty cool. It was all very cool. So, anyways, hello everybody. I got all that done. I did my personal ballot myself, and then my roommate was busy working, and so he filled out his mail-in ballot, and I was able to drop it off for him. So I had two things I had to do at my polling place today. I had to drop off the vote envelope, and I had to sign and date carefully that I was dropping off a vote ballot for my roommate, and then I got to use these brand new digital, really newfangled digital machines for voting, and I got to vote myself, and that was a two-step process. It was pretty cool. So anyways, here we are in the world of the Lord of the Rings and the Rings of Power, and this is theonering.net. Aside from that pride, this is my moment. Forgive me, everybody in the audience. Forgive me for taking a moment of civic pride. It was just a kind of a cool thing to be able to do that. And it's really awesome. Really awesome. So, all right, here's what happened, okay? People were talking online about the annotated version of The Hobbit, which was annotated by Douglas Anderson. And it got me to thinking about the annotated versions of Sandman. Believe it or not, there's a really big market and a surprisingly interesting market for getting some of your favorite works of literature, but in an annotated edition. Okay? We also are going to talk about, in the news, about Bear McCreary being put forward for music awards. Really remarkable music that he did for the series The Rings of Power. You can talk all you want and complain about the script and the storytelling if you want to complain about that, but nobody really has complaints about these other qualities of the production for Amazon series, including the visuals, the cinematography, the effects, the production design, which was so lush and beautiful. But a lot of people are on board with Bear McCreary. We're going to talk about him in just a few minutes. You guys might notice that my co-host and my producer, Justin, is not with us tonight. He is on a plane bound for New York City. He is a traveling man, quite the globe-trotter, I must admit. He is quite the globe-trotting kind of guy. So he's running around doing all kinds of interesting things. And so it is left to myself, your humble host, Clifford Broadway. You know what? I'm 10 minutes into the show, and I never bothered to introduce myself. Hello, everybody. You might know me, but I am the writer and contributor and editor at theonering.net. My name is Clifford Broadway, also the writer and producer of the documentary feature film, Ringer's Lord of the Fans, and I'm a contributor to the OneRing.net of many decades. 2 decades. I guess that's many. I mean, if you stop to think about it, 20 years is a good long time to be participating in an all-volunteer network of fans of the OneRing.net, and I'm so glad to be here hosting the show tonight. On behalf of Justin, I say good evening, everybody. I hope you're having a wonderful night. I hope you are all safe and sound, and you got if you're here in North America, I hope you got your ballots turned in and you got to vote. A lot of people were allowed branches of time to do early voting and get their ballots in early, but it's really interesting that all this stuff is going on. But look at this. We have to talk about the Embracer Group. On today's show, here on Torn Tuesday, we're going to talk about the rights acquisition that happened with the Embracer Group and what exactly that's going to mean, possibilities, and conjecture about what's going to happen with the Embracer Group now that they've got their hands on all of the J.R.R. Tolkien, Hobbit, and Lord of the Rings rights for merchandise, video games, amusement parks. Oh my God, the list keeps going on and on and on. And what is being described by Forbes magazine as one of the most complex intellectual property rights acquisitions in the history of IP rights acquisitions, believe it or not, Amazon Prime still has a quadrant of rights only to themselves for television broadcast, which, of course, includes the Rings of Power. And all the other motion picture and video game and board games, hello, talk to me about analog board games. I'm the first person in the room to line up and talk about that. Believe me. Hashtag nerd. Oh my God. I am such a nerd about board games. But Embracer Group has their own set of rights in this quadrant, and it's a massive list of things. One thing that is separated from that policy, separated from that contract that the Embracer Group purchased from the Saul Zentz Group, who had been the business entity that previously had interest and control of Tolkien Enterprises. It's no longer the Saul Zentz company, it's now the Embracer Group. But Amazon Prime, in a very interesting and somewhat iconoclastic approach to IP acquisitions, Amazon Prime has television only, while the Embracer Group has film and all the other rights. It's a really interesting thing. So there's a lot going on with that because certainly we have talked about this before on our broadcast, but the concept that a J.R.R. Tolkien, Lord of the Rings, Hobbit specific theme park, and I'm talking, look, Miyazaki and Studio Ghibli just opened up a theme park. It's actually a nature park. It looks more like a nature preserve with some interesting buildings and things going on that are related to Studio Ghibli animated properties. But I never ever thought in my lifetime, as a Tolkien fan, as a Miyazaki fan, I never thought ever in my life that Miyazaki and J.R.R. Tolkien would end up in the playground of theme parks. Yeah, theme parks. Disneyland, Universal, Harry Potter, Wizarding World, all that stuff. So if we're already here in November of 2022, and we've had the grand opening in Japan of the Miyazaki theme park, it is not so far gone a conclusion that J.R.R. Tolkien, Lord of the Rings, and Hobbit intellectual property could be immediately put into the grist mill to be made into a theme park. Now, I will admit, honestly, to the credit of Studio Ghibli and all the people who are working carefully to handle the rights of Miyazaki and Isao Takahata and the properties that they made in animated films, their approach was a very healthy and well considered and a very well thought out approach to a theme park. With the Miyazaki deal, they made a nature park that is much more in alignment with going to a conservatory or a greenhouse where you go to a botanical gardens. All right, it's not full of roller coasters and thrill rides and fireworks and all that crazy BS that you have at Disney theme parks and Knott's Berry Farm and all that stuff. There are no roller coasters. There are no dark rides at all in the Miyazaki Park. It is Studio Ghibli giving the people a chance to walk nature trails and go through the trees and the beautiful forest and the foliage and to have a peaceful, calming, and to be quite honest, a very meditative experience. Nothing about American or European theme parks are meditative. Nothing at all. It could not be further from the truth. So I have to say, I find it quite interesting. If the Embracer Group now has all of the rights to Lord of the Rings and The Hobbit, and within that world of content, they might be thinking about, oh, a big dragon Smaug roller coaster, and maybe a bunch of dark rides where we go into Mordor, or, you know, I mean, come on. Imagine, if you will, a Paths of the Dead dark ride, which could be done in the great example of the Atlantic City dark rides, the stuff they still have at Walt Disney World and Disneyland. A dark ride where you go into the paths of the dead. And it could be all the specific, creepy, fun, ghostly Tolkien stuff. Well, they could do all that stuff. But when Studio Ghibli decided that they were going to put carpenters, builders, landscapers, and everybody in this business quadrant to come up with an idea for a theme park related to all of the Studio Ghibli properties, it ended up being the opposite of the Disney model. The opposite of the Disney model. No rides, no people pushing through crowded lines to get to, a certain type of attraction or a food item. The Ghibli studio put together a theme park, if you could call it that, a theme park based on kind of like visiting a nature preserve or a nature conservatory. It's just different. And because of the success of their new model and the fact that they launched that very recently, I'm thinking that maybe a Middle Earth Lord of the Rings themed park, which is within the scope of what they have now with the intellectual property rights, imagine that they go downscale. Instead of high-end rides and high-end roller coasters, don't you think it would be a lot more interesting and maybe a lot more successful if they really do make a Middle Earth theme park, that it could be rooted in botany and plants and the natural environment, and it could be like a garden or a forest that you could explore. A completely different take on a theme park, following the example of Studio Ghibli. Imagine how pleased J.R.R. Tolkien would be. The professor himself would applaud the idea of academics and studies in plants and a great interest in the botanical world and the natural environment and producing interesting places and spaces that could be unique artistic environments for a more meditative approach instead of going for all the thrill rides. Forgive me for talking out loud for half an hour about this, but I think there's a lot of possibility in this. Instead of us being scared as a fandom, literally, we have a right to be scared, anxious, worried about whether they're going to take this literary property of Tolkien, which is quite learned, deeply thought, and deeply thoughtful. There's very few other writers in the world, and certainly very few 20th century authors that brought that level of thoughtfulness and I should say academic rigor that Tolkien brought to his world. So perhaps it would be kind of cool and appropriate for the Embracer group to always bear that in mind. And I'm gonna end that quadrant of the conversation about what they're gonna do with the intellectual property rights, but you cannot separate the academic from the popular. And perhaps this is the root of all the conversations that we have. Tolkien fans are a unique community, a unique breed. There are so many of us who are into it for the pop culture aspect. We're into it for the adventure, the sword and sorcery, and the escapism that is so successful in taking us out of our primary world and into this richly visualized, beautiful secondary world of Middle Earth, Arda. So perhaps it would be more successful for the Embracer group to keep that in mind, is that much of us in the fan community are on board because of our pop culture interests, because of the fact that escapism is therapeutic for many people in many aspects of their lives. But there's also a massive section, a fandom, which is interested in the history, the languages, the linguistic approach that Tolkien brought to his work, and the academic study thereof. So, I think it's worth mentioning that our fandom is a little bit different, a little bit more remarkable than a lot of fandoms, perhaps Marvel, Star Wars, all these other big Doctor Who fandoms. It's much more intriguing to me to see that our fandom is indeed connected to an academic approach, an academic section. And it's not really a subset, not really. It's more like a major set. There's a major component of our Tolkien fandom which is academically inclined. They're interested in Professor Tolkien's academic reach, his academic reach and his success, and the way that he put languages and the study of philology into the forefront of whatever he was doing. While there's another quadrant of us as fans who are just into the pop culture essence of it all. And yet, although we have never had any interviews yet with the Embracer group, and I would like to extend that invitation. Hello, hi guys, how you doing? Hello, Embracer group. This is Torn Tuesday. We are a live stream show, a very interesting and dynamic and engaged, fully engaged show that we do every Tuesday. So if you ever want to come on, maybe some of you representatives from the Embracer group would like to come and join us and have a conversation. Let's do this. Maybe we can learn something about one another and temper the conversation of expectations with wisdom and talk about how much we love Tolkien and what we plan on doing and what kind of energetic ideas the Embracer group has going forward. I am open to that. And again, I extend that invitation to any of you beautiful people from the Embracer group to come and join us and talk about what you guys want to put forward. I can't tell you guys enough that this is something inescapable. This is a new change in the landscape of all of our fandom that we cannot escape. It's not going anywhere. This is it. The relationship that we have with the Embracer group is everything going forward. And also understand that that's that piece of it. Our relationship with Prime Video and the way that fandom is responding to the television side is a whole separate box of cookies. Totally separate. It's all over here. And we continue to engage ourselves with the showrunners, the writers, and the producers who have recently been coming out with very interesting podcast interviews. There's some really cool stuff going on with the Rings of Power. You want to learn more about the insights that the writers and the producers have. You can listen to some really cool Felicia Day podcasts that have been coming out. Now, hello to all the live chat. It's excellent to have you joining us. There's Oscar, Erovandi, Atalante, a box of maggoty bread cookies. You're funny. There's Storyteller and XOXO 2000. Hello, everyone. It's great to have you guys join us. Welcome to the live show. So, Megan, hello, Megan. Megan, my dear friend, Megan Sissel, says, you said it, Cliff. There should be a themed park that's different from the traditional American style of theme park amusement parks. Well, we really could. We could have a whole... Imagine that the Middle-earth theme park is all botanical gardens. Really. Maybe there's a couple of rides. Maybe there's a couple of attractions. But can you imagine botanical gardens that are filled with exhibits, projections, displays, statues? So many cool things could happen. I mean, look, we're in a different world now. It doesn't have to be the 1955 Walt Disney model of a theme park, which was directly modeled off the World's Fair. Everybody knows that the World's Fair and how they put together their walkways, rotundas, and physical spaces and attractions, all that stuff that happened at the World's Fair is tied into Western, modern American theme park design. It's all tied in. So I'd like to see some breakaways from that. You know, some innovation. Innovation is what we want. And believe it or not, the Embracer group is in a good position to innovate. They can start bringing us all kinds of new things, new approaches, and new ideas. Hi, Monica. Hi, Garth. Hello, of Gondor. Good to see you. And there's Finrod. Okay. Well, yeah, Finrod, that is true. I listened to that podcast, and some of the showrunners' logic is a little bit murky. Yes, I agree with that assessment. I also listened to the showrunners having these conversations with Felicia Day, and some of it sounds spot on, and some of it sounds a little bit murky. You know, it is what it is. What, a swan boat through Rivendell? Garth says, all right, a Mines of Moria roller coaster and a barrel out of bonds ride. Like a log ride. You mean a water flume ride? Okay. Okay, and the rest is forests and gardens and hobbit holes. That could be fun. That could be very, very, very fun. Okay, Stephen Messina, what an excellent question. When will the Silmarillion be made into a trilogy? How about when will the Silmarillion be made into a multi-season television show? Because it would not be a trilogy of films. My dear friend, I love the way you think, but let's be intellectually honest here. When the Silmarillion is ever going to be made, it's not going to be movies. It's not going to be a trilogy of movies. It simply has to be. And come on and fight me on this. Give me your opinion, and I'm happy to have a conflicting or a contrasting opinion. But the Silmarillion belongs into a 7-season massive omnibus that goes on and on and on for years and years. And I don't think the Silmarillion could be conveniently crystallized into a 3-film trilogy. I love the way you think, okay? And look, the Shiv Knight has said, I feel like Baron and Luthien on its own could be a separate movie. And yes, it could. And that's an example of what I'm talking about. If it was a television series, the Silmarillion could go and let the Baron and Luthien storyline go on for 4, 5, 6 episodes, and then we go on into Turambar, another few episodes, and then we go into the Fall of Gondolin, another 5 or 6 episode arc. For example, take a look at what they did with The Sandman. Season 1 of The Sandman was a breakdown from the structure of the comic books to be major story arc 1 and then major story arc 2. It was 1 season, only 1 season on Netflix. And yet, because of the approach to adaptation, the producers and the showrunners, under the guidance of Neil Gaiman himself, and yes, I understand we would all be happier if J.R.R. Tolkien were still alive today. And yes, if he was alive, he would be in the position that Neil Gaiman was in, where he could directly advise and incorporate his input into what the producers are doing. But in any case, I'm sorry, Tolkien is long gone, and Neil Gaiman, luckily, is able to work with the producers. But Sandman Season 1 was not just 1 story arc. It was a story arc, big, long story arc, and a short story, and then another big story arc, and 2 short stories that were shoved in at the end of it as a surprise bonus episode. So you could take the Silmarillion, which is major story arc, little side bit, then another major story arc. And because the Sandman broke it down as successfully as it did, then I think it's quite possible for the Silmarillion to appear as a limited series or an ongoing series that was able to break down within 1 season multiple arcs, multiple narrative plot points that could be broken down and compartmentalized within 1 season. It can happen, and now we have the proof that it can happen successfully. So it could happen. So, hello, Monica. Yes, there's a storm in San Diego. I believe it. You've got weird Wi-Fi. Okay, of Gondor. Cliff, what is your favorite chapter of the Silmarillion and why? Go. Okay, my favorite chapter, and has always been my favorite, is the early stuff. The Anulendale. The Anulendale, the song of the Ainur. There's nothing more impressive to me, and I mean really powerful, an impression, that J.R.R. Tolkien gave us a mythology and a creation myth. A creation myth based on music and song. As if there was a symphony that brought the universe into existence. What a grand idea. I want everybody, and I know you guys know this, I know that you're all really familiar with this concept, but think about it just a little bit more. We have a creation myth in Judeo-Christian storytelling. We have a creation myth in ancient Chinese folklore. We have a creation myth in ancient Norwegian mythology. All around the world, there's so many different approaches to the egg of the universe, the embryo of the universe, and how it all began. But when John Ronald Reuel Tolkien sat down at his desk and he said to himself, I'm going to create a creation myth that is based on music, a symphony of sound, melody, blending music with the idea of physical, molecular creation. Coolest thing that's ever happened. I swear to you, my favorite part of the Silmarillion is all that early stuff, where the gods and the goddesses of the Valar and the other angelic beings of the Maiar, and all of their responsibilities and their powers and their efficacy in the world that they just created with their own symphonic song. It's the coolest stuff ever. I love the tragedy of Beren and Luthien. I really love the tragedy of the children of Hurin. I love the stories of the First Age with all the challenges against Morgoth and the great battles of valor and the champions, both elves and men, the champions who fought against the Balrogs and Morgoth, and I love all that stuff. Believe me, I think that is amazing stuff. But to be really honest with you, nothing captures my imagination like the Anulendale, the song of the Ainur. There's something deeply, deeply fascinating about that. I love it. I love that stuff. So, anyways, Melkor was a metal musician. Yes, that's right. Melkor was doing his own discord, his own weird discordant stuff that made the world full of weirdness and pain and conflict and strife and also destruction. Quite interesting. Imagine. Yes, Susan, I love you for saying that. Singing the world into existence. It's so cool. All right, now, Atalante says, I always loved the Second Age, so it hurts when they get it wrong. Well, yeah, well, okay. Let's talk about the Rings of Power. Now, we're moving into the second phase of our show. The Rings of Power recently started a beautiful and interesting campaign to bring attention to Bear McCreary's music. So I was talking with my producer, my co-host, Justin. I was talking with him earlier today, and he says, look at this. And there on Instagram, he showed me that LOTR on Prime Amazon Studios and LOTR on Prime have just put forth a big post that Hollywood Music in Media Awards has nominated Bear McCreary for the best score for the television show The Rings of Power. And this is a direct indication that award season has begun already. Right, okay, it's November and we're moving into December. It's the end of the year, and this is the time of year when all the studios put out their prestige motion pictures. Prestige motion pictures that might not be commercially successful, they might not be blockbusters, but they're Oscar bait. Ooh, it's time for the Oscar bait. And everybody in Los Angeles knows that the award ceremony goes on through the late winter and into early spring. There's the Spirit Awards, the Golden Globe Awards, the Oscars. There's the SAG Awards for the Screen Actors Guild. There's this whole big list of all of these awards, and they come out at the late winter, early spring. We're going to be moving into 2023 when all of this happens. But, and of course, the Emmy Awards. Let us not forget the Primetime Emmy Awards. That's all coming up. And when we see this Instagram post, it is, it's only a dozen years old. This is a legit organization. The Hollywood Music in Media Awards is legit. They're a great organization, only a dozen years old, but they're honest industry musicians. This organization is based on the musicians who do all of your science fiction music for your shows, and they do all the music for Bridgerton, your costume dramas, and they do all the music for The Dark Crystal, and for Lock and Key, and for The Sandman, and for Breaking Bad, and for Westworld, and Succession, and Fleabag, and The Boys, and all these other TV shows. So this is a legit organization, and they are trying to elevate the art form, clearly. So Hollywood Music and Media Awards has nominated Bear McCreary for Best Television Show Score, and they're a bunch of industry musicians elevating this art form. This is really interesting. But on the other end of it, we also recognize that Amazon Studios probably hired an awards PR team, a set group of individuals who are going to handle public relations, all the PR work for the award season going forward. And as I mentioned, there's a lot of different award shows from different industry guild affiliations, okay? Industry guilds and different people, including the Hollywood Foreign Press Association with the Golden Globes and the Primetime Emmys, and all these people are coming out with nominees. It's all happening. And we should all pay attention to this process. All right? I'm I'm really kind of looking forward to this, because one of the first jobs that I ever had working for Ian McKellen was when I was working for Ian McKellen's webmaster, Keith Stern. He's the webmaster and the creator of McKellen.com. And it was way, way, way back in the back in time machine that I started working for Ian McKellen, even before he was cast in the role of Magneto in X-Men, and before he was cast as Gandalf in The Lord of the Rings. He was busy working with Lionsgate for an awards campaign for Bill Condon's film Gods and Monsters. Okay, Lynn Redgrave, Sir Ian McKellen, and that guy from The Mummy. Okay, Brendan Fraser. That guy from the Mummy films, okay? there was a big awards campaign going on for Gods and Monsters. And believe it or not, this was my introduction into the mechanisms and the process of what goes on in an awards campaign. And I got up close and personal working with Lionsgate and Ian for that campaign. And it ended up with Ian McKellen and Lynn Redgrave both being nominated for Academy Awards. That year, Miss Redgrave won. She won the award for Best Supporting Actress. Yes, she did. But Ian McKellen did not win the Oscar for Gods and Monsters. He would be nominated many years later. It was not that many years later, but Ian McKellen would be nominated for Best Supporting Actor playing Gandalf the Grey in The Lord of the Rings, The Fellowship of the Ring. Yes, so Ian was nominated yet again a couple of years later, and that responsibility for handling that Oscar campaign was run entirely by New Line and all the people working with Bob Shea and Gordon Pattison, wonderful people at New Line who helped handle all of that stuff. So now we got the very first whiff that Bear McCreary is the very first person from the production of The Rings of Power who's being put forward for awards campaign season. Yes, it is happening. It is definitely happening. And yes, thank you, Garth, and thank you, Daisy. Yep, Gods and Monsters was awesome. And it's really, really good stuff. Now, excuse me, let's consider what we're going to look at and the other elements of the awards season campaign that are predictable, that are going to be coming forward from Prime Video as we go forward. For the Emmy Awards and for the Screen Actors Guild Awards, particularly, we need to pay attention to that stuff. Okay, guys? And here at theonering.net, we're going to be looking at all the news and announcements and all the rumors that are coming forward because the people at Prime Video have most certainly hired a PR team. And these public relations people, hardworking on that team, are going to be handling Screen Actors Guild Awards nominations for the actors and probably for the ensemble. I bet you they're going to go for a complete ensemble award. But we're also looking at the Cinematographers Guild and other guilds, the Writers Guild and other people who are giving out awards based upon just the craft, just that position, whether it's lights, carpentry, cinematography, writers, whatever they're doing. So, but it's going to lead up to the grand scale end game, which will be beyond the SAG Awards, the Golden Globes. You know for sure, you know it without me telling you that Prime Video is going to be fishing around to get Golden Globe Awards recognition for The Rings of Power. And then beyond that, they'll be looking for awards recognition for the Primetime Emmy Awards. And right here, looking at this early nomination for Bear McCreary, you can tell that a lot of these wheels are now in motion. So, as usual, you can come to us at theonering.net, everybody that we find out about and everything that is being maneuvered on the table for award season. When we find out about it, we will report everything to you guys. And thank you for being our faithful audience here at theonering.net. We're going to bring all that stuff to you, and we'll talk about it as we learn more. Okay? XO 2000. I see Garth. I see Finrod. Hello. What are we doing? We've got a lot of wonderful people here. Hello, or Orion's Angel. And there's Otaku Senpai. Now, Otaku Senpai has a question here in the live chat, in the YouTube chat. What should follow the War of the Rohirrim. Perhaps we should look at feature films for the fall of Arthedain, which was one of the 3 northern kingdoms. The northern kingdoms. That's right. You guys know that it's not always about Gondor. Gondor is all that late Third Age stuff. But there was Arnor. There was also the northern kingdom of Arnor. And that included Hrúdawr, Arthedain, and Cardolan. That is correct. And so I appreciate you, Otaku Senpai, for mentioning that. We could do the tale of Aragorn and Arwen. Yes, we could. The fall of Arthedain. Yes, we could. Yeah, that's good stuff. We could definitely dig into that. I love you guys. Hello, Arne. It's Arna. Arne, I love you, man. Great to have you here with us, everybody. Oh, what happened? The Saturn Awards were recently announced. Yes, the Saturn Awards were recently announced. I need to look that up. I need to find out. The reason why the Saturn Awards are particularly interesting as a science fiction and fantasy specific industry award is because my documentary movie, Ringer's Lord of the Fans, was indeed a Saturn Award nominee for Best Documentary Feature Film. I don't know if any of you guys in the audience know that, but it's true. I am a Saturn Award nominee. We did not win the category that night, but I'm very, very proud of that nomination. I'm very, very proud that the hard work we did on this documentary movie about the Lord of the Rings fandom and the energy that is behind all of our engagement with J.R.R. Tolkien. Even though we didn't win, it was such an incredible moment in my early career to be nominated with other Saturn Award nominees for Ringer's Lord of the Fans. It's still something I'm very proud of. So I appreciate you guys mentioning that. Thank you, Ellen. Oh, Ellen, you're so sweet. Oh my gosh, hello. You know, you reach around and suddenly the camera moves and the cable, you just snapped a cable out of your laptop and oh man, and then your ear pods are coming out of your ears and all of a sudden it's, whoa, what just happened? All right. I apologize for that, my audience. I just accidentally pulled my ear pod out of my ears. But looking at the Rings of Power from fresh eyes is the best experience that I have had in a long time. Let me say that again, because we're about to go into the closing segment of our show. And before we get into the final segment of our show, I have to say, I saw the Rings of Power and I watched it over again and I saw the Rings of Power on my own again so that I could get more in touch with the approach to the writing and the production and the beautiful, beautiful cinematography and some of the interesting choices they made. But I had the great advantage. Oh boy, oh boy, did I have the advantage. I got the chance to sit down and watch The Rings of Power one more time with my partner who had never seen it. So that's the best experience to have, is to watch the TV series The Rings of Power, no matter what your personal opinion might be, but to watch the show with a newbie with fresh eyes, a fresh take on all of this. It was very rewarding to watch The Rings of Power all over again. And my partner was like, holy cow, look at that. He, he was like, the way that Arondir approached the tree, the way that Arondir apologized to that tree before he chopped it down in episode 3. Okay? I mean, I had my own experience with that. But then sitting on the couch and watching a loved one experience the show for the first time and the way they really responded to it, the way that the evil orcs, and thank you, Jed Brophy, for being the most amazing evil orc, but the way that the evil orcs offered a water ration to the elves that ended up with one of them getting their throat slit. Tragic death. 2 tragic deaths in that scene. And the first appearance of the Chihuahua warg, which is commonly called the Chihuahua warg. All right? That was so cool. And I bet you good money that any of you folks out there who think, if you think that you know the Rings of Power, and you know what it's like, and you've seen it, and you're like, okay, I've done that. You don't know what it's like until somebody sitting next to you is a brand newbie, a real noob, and they go to Numenor for the first time, and they meet Queen Regent Tarmiriel for the first time, and they start to suspect that Halbrand is Sauron for the first time. I think that's really cool. It's really, really cool stuff to watch the TV series once again, even though you might be jaded and you're all, set in your opinion. And God knows I'm kind of set in my opinion. Yes, I will admit that. But there's a great benefit to be had by watching the series again with a non-Tolkien reader, who's a non-reader, a non-fan, who's just experiencing the TV series on their own. And you sit next to them and you're like, oh, okay, wait a minute. And you can hit pause and you can tell them, well, it's sort of like this, That's really cool stuff. It's really cool stuff. So thank you. So Otaku Senpai says, so why did the warg look so different from the wild wolves that harassed the Harfoots? Good question. Maybe it's because the wild wolves that harassed the Harfoots are not wargs. And they're not wargs at all. Maybe they're the transformation of the 3 acolytes of Sauron. Maybe. Anyways, this has been a really exciting show, and because it's a little bit after the hour, I'm afraid that I do have to go. I love you all very much. It's really exciting. We're going to have some interesting stuff from the world of video games. That's right. The world of Lord of the Rings and Gollum and Middle-earth Online, all the video game stuff. Oh my gosh, we're going to get into that next week for sure. So until then, I wish you all a very safe week. Take care of one another. Be good to one another. And I'll see you next week right here at Torn Tuesday, 5 o'clock Pacific time. Until then, buenos noches y buena suerte. Good night, everybody, and thank you for being with me.